All right, so welcome to Abundant EM. We are glad you are here. Today we are going over the message complaints of the ungrateful from Numbers chapter 11. Can we all stand to read the word of the Lord together today? It is 4 slides, so we're going to actually just do them all together. All right, do we have them up there? Awesome. Verses 4 to 6. Ready? Begin. Then the foreign rabble who were traveling with the Israelites began to crave the good things of Egypt. And the people of Israel also began to complain. "Oh, for some meat," they exclaimed. "We remember the fish we used to eat for free in Egypt, and we had all the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic we wanted. But now our appetites are gone. All we ever see is this manna." Verse 10. Ready to begin. Moses heard all the families standing in the doorways of their tents whining, and the Lord became extremely angry. Moses was also very aggravated. And Moses said to the Lord, "Why are you treating me, your servant, so harshly? What did I do to deserve the burden of all these people? I can't carry all these people by myself. The load is far too heavy. If this is how you intend to treat me, just go ahead and kill me. Do me a favor and spare me this misery." Verse 16, then the Lord said to Moses, "Gather before me 70 men who are recognized as elders and leaders of Israel. Bring them to the tabernacle to stand there with you. I will come down and talk to you there. I will take some of the spirit that is upon you, and I will put the spirit upon them also. They will bear the burden of the people along with you, so you will not have to carry it alone." Last slide. "And say to the people, purify yourselves, for tomorrow you will have meat to eat. You were whining, and the Lord heard you when you cried, 'Oh, for some meat. We were better off in Egypt.' Now the Lord will give you meat, and you will have to eat it. And it won't be just for a day or 2 or for 5 or 10 or even 20. You will eat it for a whole month until you gag and are sick of it. For you have rejected the Lord who is here among you, and you have whined to him, saying, 'Why did we ever leave Egypt?'" This is the word of the Lord. You may be seated. All right, if you could eat any one thing for the rest of your life, what would you eat? Okay, turn to your neighbor and tell them, what's the one thing you would eat if you could eat anything? He needs a partner. If you could eat anything in the world, what's the one thing? There's no expense to this, no expense, but it has to be the same thing. Okay, for a month. All right, your whole life for a month. What's the one thing you would eat if you could eat it for the rest of the whole month? No expenses, limited. Wagyu. You could eat Wagyu every day for every meal for a month. You'd be okay with that? What else? Samuel loves Wagyu. Who else? What would you eat? What'd you say? What? Hot pot. Every day? Okay, hot pot is kind of like smart because you could like change what you put into it, you know? But okay, hot pot every day for a month. Every meal. You could eat it? You wouldn't get sick of it? Eat 1 meal a day. Okay, what'd you say, Isaac? Chicken? Chick-fil-A chicken? Every day for a month? Oh, okay, you guys are being smart and like cheating. Okay, chicken, sandwich, chicken. What did you say, David or Nyan? What did you guys say? You said what? What did you say? King crab? Every day for a month you could eat it and not get sick? Really? What'd you say, Daniel? Really? King crab too? So Daniel and David will eat king crab together every day for a month. You guys, okay, so here's this thing. You think, You can't share food, okay? Okay, so I cannot eat the same thing for more than like 3 or 4 days. I will go crazy. Even if it's like my favorite thing to eat and I love it, but if I eat the same thing every day for like more than a couple days, never mind a week, never mind a month, I get like really, really angry, okay? I cannot eat the same thing in a row. Here's the thing. Here we are. We're moving into a new unit. We talked about God's goodness and his faithfulness, and now we're seeing the Israelites and their response. And spoiler alert, it's not great, okay? It's not great. We see humanity's selfishness, which stands in stark contrast to God's goodness. So we can judge Israel all we want. Look at the story. We can judge them all we want. But the reality is, We are not much different. The Israelites in the wilderness after Egypt is the exact picture of us. Once we are free from sin and slavery, go through the waters of baptism like the Red Sea, and we are in the wilderness being shaped into God's people, we are just like the Israelites. We can judge them all we want. Be like, man, aren't you guys tired of complaining the same complaint at this point? This is deja vu. We've already seen this happen before. But here's the reality. We are just like the Israelites. So today, as you hear this word, I want you to ask yourself, it's like looking at a mirror. You know those mirrors that are like magnified? They're like 5 times, 10 times magnification mirrors? You know, those are not very pretty. You see all your clogged up pores. You see every scar, whatever on your face. Okay, but you got to take a good look because the Israelites are just like us. So here's the context. The Israelites have finished the tabernacle, right? They've built it. And now they are celebrating the second Passover. So it's been exactly a year since God literally freed them from Egypt. Okay? When you have an anniversary, okay, confession time. Who counts all of their 100 days, 200 days, 300 days of date or whatever, okay? You don't have to raise your hand. I never understood that because that's too many days to count, man, okay? My husband and I, we only celebrate anniversary, and that's it because there's too many. We actually have 2 wedding dates because we got married here and in Korea, but we only do one because it's too much work, man. December 20th, that's our day, okay? Now, what's the point of an anniversary? Is it to spend millions of dollars? Don't do stuff like that, okay? No. It's to actually remember the point of why you got together, right? If on my anniversary, okay, if I'm scrolling through TikTok and I and all these guys on TikTok and talking to them on my anniversary dinner, would that be the right thing to do? No. That defeats the whole purpose, right? This anniversary is to remember why you're together. Just like at this Passover, the purpose was for Israel to remember how God miraculously, it's only been 1 year, okay? But instead of remembering what God has done, remembering how God literally passed over, death passed over each of their sons, how God miraculously freed them from Egypt, the Red Sea, they literally do not remember any of those things. And instead, what are they doing? They're complaining about food. Now, who is it that started this complaint? So when the Israelites left, there was a group of people who also left with them. They were not Israelites. They were foreigners. So some of them would have been Egyptian, maybe other countries, because Egypt was like the capital of the world at that time. So it was very diverse there. And so people also who are not Israelites saw what God did, and they're like, whoa, this God is real. I'm going to follow Israel out because that's the safest place to be. And so there was a group of people who are not Israelites who believed and followed them out. But this is the group who started craving the things of Egypt. Okay, now, the Israelites then also began to complain. If you go to Numbers 11, verse 4, the next slide. Okay, scoot over next slide. Literally, they're craving the things of Egypt. What are they craving? Meat, fish, cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, garlic. That's what they're craving for. Now, here's the thing. Just like a tiny group starts to complain, it's spread to the entire camp, every single person. Now, how many of you've had friends in your life that one of them is a complainer, okay? Like literally that person or your workplace, okay? Who has, you know what I'm talking about? Suddenly you guys are like, I understand. There's someone who comes to mind, okay? In your workplace or in your friend circle or in your family of origin, there's one person who always complains. Okay, now that person and how they complain, it begins to spread like wildfire, right? Like the punigi is always annoying and down around that person because they're always complaining, okay? Think of the 5 people you are most around in your life, okay? Parents, family, significant other, coworkers, friends. They say the 5 people you spend the most time with, you will become like those 5 people. So be mindful and be aware of who is around you. Because literally, it was a small group that started this complaint, but that spread like wildfire until the whole camp of 2 million people were sitting there complaining. Now, confession time. If you're the friend that complains, you better watch out, okay? Because that person, you are the one that can be the start of this. So be aware. Listen today, because we all need a heart reset. What started as a tiny group, everyone starts to complain. Okay, remember, these Israelites, when they say, I wish I could go back to Egypt, what are they actually saying? They're saying, I wish I could go back into slavery. Because you don't get to go back for free. You don't get to go back and then just eat cucumbers and leeks and melons. They're like, I wish I could actually go back into slavery. That's what they're actually saying. Now, here's the thing. It isn't actually about cucumbers or leeks or melons or garlic, okay? This is actually about a heart of ingratitude. And you see it here at the very end, the last sentence. All we ever see is this manna. Okay, now, here's the thing. We could point fingers all we want, but I know I would be just like the Israelites. Because if I eat the same thing more than 3 days, I get mad, okay? But can you imagine? This is perfect nutritional profile. Literally bread from heaven. Nobody ever got sick eating this, okay? It's the best thing for you. And yet, right there we see the spirit and the heart of contempt and ingratitude. Okay, here's the thing. They could wake up and one part of them, they could have been like, wow, look at how God provides for us every morning. And instead, that had turned into, same thing again. Do you see the total different attitude in that? Same manna on the ground, same provision of God every morning, every day. And yet their perspective had shifted because of ingratitude. Now remember, this feels like deja vu, right? How many times have they complained about food? This is the manyth time. But here's the thing. Back in Exodus, when we first talked about this a few weeks back, they had those 3 tests, right? Food, water, and they failed every single time. Now, there's a difference, because at that time, it's kind of like when a child gets adopted, okay? When a child gets adopted into a family, when they're first adopted, they don't know the ways of that family, right? And they're not supposed to, because they just got adopted. So in Exodus, those 3 tests that God gave the Israelites that they failed each time, it was kind of like they were newly adopted. God had just freed them, and now he had just adopted them as his own. Okay, so there was some grace there of like, okay, here's how we're going to function as God's family. I'm going to provide for you. You're going to trust me. And they failed. But God was like, I'm here to teach you. But here we are in the book of Numbers, okay? It has been a year. This is after Mount Sinai, after 10 Commandments, after the golden calf. They've learned their lesson over and over again. And now Israel is like a stubborn, rebellious teenager. Okay? They should know the rules now. They should know how it works with God. And yet here they are, still having this spirit of ingratitude. In Numbers 11, verse 4, this beginning part, scroll back, where it says, oh, for some meat. Other translations translate that to this question, who will give us meat? And that's actually the heart of the issue. Is it actually about meat? No. They think it is. They think it's about the Wagyu that they want to eat, but it's not actually about that. It's actually about this question of who's going to feed us? Who's going to feed us? It's their blatant doubt, lack of faith. The funny thing is, if God was a fickle God who was not consistent, was not faithful, was not always there for them, this question would make sense. But day in and day out, every single moment for the past year, God has provided them food from heaven, shade in the day, fire and warmth at night. He has literally split the Red Sea. There's so many things he has done. So you know that saying when we say, I'll believe it when I see it, God. No, you won't. Because the Israelites saw it. lived it, experienced it, and still their hearts were hardened against God. Still, they could not get over their unbelief. What will it take? What will it take for the Israelites to understand? Their biggest issue was not about meat. It was about lack of faith. Now, here's the thing. Remember how I said the Israelites are just like who? Us. Just like me, okay? Now flip this mirror back on you. In Hebrews 11, the author talks about, without faith, we could not live for God. And all throughout Scripture, there's all these examples of broken men and women, like Abraham, Sarah, Noah, people who are not perfect. They learned to have faith in God. Now, this serves as an example for us because we are like the Israelites. We are often guilty of ingratitude. We are often guilty of forgetting that God is faithful. We are often guilty of forgetting that He provides for us. God provides for us, but then we get mad because He doesn't do it our way. God is faithful to us, but we forget and we doubt the future. God provides for our needs, but not in the way or timing that we want. And so we are like a little child that is mad at their parent for not doing it their way. Here's the thing. Let's have an honest look at ourselves, because we can blame God all we want. And there's a time and there's a place for that. But at the same time, we have to look at ourselves. What are the ways that I too am also guilty of ingratitude? No one is going to be like, oh, me, I'm super ungrateful. No one has that kind of self-awareness, okay? But what we can realize is, oh, maybe I'm complaining. Do you see? So that's actually the easiest way for us to get to the heart of the issue is, what am I complaining about? Because all of us do it. All of us do it. All of us do it. What does that reveal about our hearts? So here, Numbers 11, verse 10 and 11. Next slide. Moses heard how many families? All the families whining. Can you imagine 2 million people whining at the same time? Okay, if you have a 2.5-year-old, if you have nothing going on in your life, you can take my child with you this week, and you can count how many times this 2.5-year-old of mine complains and jang jang go yao. Okay, and then you could be like, wow, life is hard for Stacy, okay? Do you guys know how annoying it is to have kids complaining? That is one of the most annoying things sometimes, okay? But can you imagine 2 million people complaining at the same time? So God became extremely angry, and Moses was also aggravated. Okay, and this time Moses is like, you know what, God? Because last time he was like, God, have mercy on them, you know. This time he's like, God, shoot me now. Just shoot me now, okay? Like, kill me. I want nothing to do with these crazy people that you've given me, okay? And part of me can relate to that. I can understand that to a degree of like, you know what? I get it, Moses. I get you. You sound like a burned out person right now. I get it. But here's the thing. Who is he actually also blaming? He's like, why'd you do this to me, God? Why did you call me on that burning bush day? Why did I stop at the burning bush? Why did I say yes to this? Because this sucks, okay? He sounds just like a burned out leader. Because God had specifically called Moses. Nobody else in human history has ever had a burning bush experience but Moses. Okay, so don't wish for a burning bush, man, because then this is what you're going to end up with sometimes, all right? I'm just kidding. But the point being, he had forgotten that God had called him. And when it got tough, he also complained, actually. So Moses is not perfect either. He was also complaining. So here's the 2 takeaway points that I take from this passage right here. Number 1, God also responds when we complain. Okay, he does. And his response here was that he was angry. God is not some emotionless, distant being with no reactions. What we do makes him immensely joyful or really angry. He has a response. When I see some crazy kid at Chick-fil-A doing some crazy things in the playground, I'm like, But does it make me angry? Not unless it hurts my child, then I get angry. But otherwise, I'm like, you know what? That's your parents' problem, not me, okay? I'm not responsible for how you turn out in 10 years. But my kids, when they do something wrong, I get mad and I get upset and I have to discipline them because they're my children. I care for them. You are God's child. He loves you and cares for you. And what you do causes a reaction in him too. But here's the thing. He's a good God. Just, right, merciful, good, kind. And so he will not react like our parents do, our earthly fathers who react in wrong ways, broken ways, out of anger. He doesn't do that. But what you do does impact him. It does. And we can trust that his response is right. But here's the second thing we can learn. When we are doing what God has called us to do, whether it's in your families, in your workplaces, because we all know in your workplaces, we can cut corners, right? But God has called you as a Christian to be light and salt literally in your workplaces, in your families, among your friends. God has called you to all those spaces. Or serving at this church, or whatever it may be, God has called each of us to something, some kind of capacity. There will come a time when you get overwhelmed, when you don't want to do what God's called you to do anymore, when you get burned out. And that is when you have to remember who called you. God has called you. And so he will equip you for the task ahead of you. But you got to ask him, because only he can do that. So how does God respond? When my kids, man, sometimes I get really triggered, okay? I don't have some proud moments sometimes as a parent. However, how does God respond to Moses' complaint? In verse 16, he tells Moses, I hear you. You're right. This is too much of a burden for you. Gather 70 leaders, 70 men who are reputable. And I will take the spirit that I put upon you and I will put it upon them. And they will bear the burden of the people with you. God answers Moses' complaints by giving him people to do the work with him. Leadership is often hard when it's done alone, and that is not God's way of doing it. So in this church, in this body, we carry each other's burdens together. As Christians, we're called to serve one another in love. Whether you have a quote-unquote official title or not, we are all called to bear each other's burdens, to love each other, not to judge each other, to pray for each other, to believe the very best for each other. For better or worse, we are called to do life together as Christians. And so let me ask you, ask yourself, what part am I playing in loving others and bearing others within this body, or within my family, or among my friends, or in my workplace? How does God respond to the Israelites? Here in verse 18, tell the people, get ready. Put your bib on, he's saying, all right? Because I'm going to give you meat. You asked for meat. I'm giving you meat. Every day you will eat it for a month until you gag and are sick of it, okay? For you, what's the issue? It's not the meat. God is not a vegetarian. He don't care about that. That's not the point. The point is what? You have rejected me. I am here. Literally, remember the tabernacle that they spent all this time building for God's presence to dwell there? He's like, I'm literally right there. You ask the question, who's going to give us food? I am literally right there with you. And you're going to say instead, you're going to doubt, you're going to reject me. Sometimes the worst thing God can do is answer your prayer. That's the worst thing. Okay, so be careful what you pray. God gives them meat every day for a month. He's saying, look, it's not about the meat. It's about your lack of faith. What more do I have to do? God is saying. I am literally in your presence, and still you are struggling with doubt, lack of faith, rejection, all because of what? Complaint, right? They didn't come there like, you know what, God, I am so faithless. I'm so mad at you. That's not what they did. They're complaining about food. And so the reality is our complaints, now we're human, so we have them. We all have them, okay? But what do our complaints reveal about our hearts? That's the part we are responsible for. Your complaints are not said in a vacuum, okay? Whether or not you vocalize it out loud or it stays in your heart, okay? They are not in a vacuum. God hears our complaints. And so be careful what you complain about, because sometimes God may actually give you exactly what you want, and you may find that the problem is worse. Here, God is addressing the same issue to us. Complaining is a slippery slope that often leads us astray as Christians. It's not drugs, it's not alcohol, it's not sex, it's not those things. Those things aren't great either. But it's complaining. That's the slippery slope for us. And so when we catch ourselves complaining, let that be the first sign. When I work with families or couples and there's arguments, one of the first things I have them work on is, how do you know the argument is starting to get out of hand? How do you know that? It's not by the time you're sleeping apart. It began way before then. What are the warning signs that this is not healthy in your relationship? And I have them point that out. You know what that temperature gauge is for us as Christians? It's complaining. That is the first sign. That is the first step that something is not right. Something is not right. And if I let this complaining go wild, then I'm going to get meat every day for a month. Or just kidding. But the point is, it's not going to be good for me. Complaining is the first time, the first sign that something is not wrong. Something is not right. Okay? So when you catch yourself complaining, and those of you who have good friends around you, good partners, good significant others, whatever it is in your life, catch it for each other in kindness, right? So Nyan, when David starts to complain so much, you're like, you know what? I feel like you're complaining. And I feel like maybe that's a slippery slope, and maybe you should look into that. I say David because he would rarely ever complain out loud, okay? But the point being, we all have our complaints. And so let that be the first sign to you. Oh, something's not okay in here, in my heart. And so I got to get right before God. Can I have the praise to come up? Let's dig deeper. Often when we complain, what is the root issue? The root issue is fear. The root issue of most our complaints is fear. So think about the things that you complain about, okay? On any given day, what do you complain about in your head? All of us have it. What do you complain about? And I'm going to be willing to bet that most of those complaints, the root issue is fear. Is fear. Fear of the future, fear of the unknown, fear of safety, fear of XYZ. It's probably fear. The greatest way that a Christian can fight fear is through faith. Not faith in ourselves, because at this stage in life, I hope we all know that we can't do it on our own. But faith in an all-powerful God. What makes Christianity different? Hope is a distinct feature in Christianity that you don't find anywhere else. Because we place our hope in an all-powerful God. All faithful, all-knowing, all good. God who wants to dwell with us. So can we all stand? As we sing this song, we all know it. It's the song Gratitude. The only way we can combat fear and complaint is through faith and gratitude. And so even if you don't feel it, together right now, let's worship with this song.